Well, it's time for a new acquisition video, and this is actually a pretty exciting video for me because, as you can see, this is a Brian Tighe knife. And if you haven't heard of Brian Tighe, he is a Canadian custom knife maker, and I believe he's been doing this for maybe 30 years now, so he's been in the game a long time, and he's had a lot of time to really refine his craft. So here's the case it comes in case you're wondering. Really nice felt lined cushioned case. With kind of a leather patch on the front that's stitched on there. But nonetheless, here's the Brian Tighe model, and this is the tiebreaker. And I'm going to talk about the specs and then kind of share with you my thoughts and impressions and kind of how I came to this point in my collection. So let's get specs out of the way. Overall length is just over 9 inches. Blade length is 4 1/4, and the sharpen length is just over 4 inches there. So this is over a 4-inch blade. As you can see, this is kind of a belt polish, and then the flats are nice and satined, and it's quite attractive. It really gives it a very elegant look, and it looks like a gentleman's folder as much as it does a kind of a mean business knife. So the blade steel is BG42, which is quite popular among the Canadian makers, and obviously it uses a flipper. Very nice. And you can light switch it, or you can push button it. And this one is still getting broken in, so the button lock, let me see if I can show you how that works real quick. Button lock, it moves away that piece of steel right there that's kind of jammed in the back of the blade, and there's a groove that goes from a wider portion down to a more narrow portion, so that round piece of steel that comes out, it actually goes into that channel. Maybe you can see it, maybe you can't, but yeah, right there you can see that channel down in there. Anyhow, so it's a button lock, which is an interesting lock. This is my first time with a button lock, and it's pretty cool. This one's still breaking in, so it's rather sticky. But this knife came to me as pretty much new in box or new in pouch, or whatever you want to call it. So BG42 stainless steel, uses a flipper, has thumb studs, which also work to deploy it very nicely. And yeah, a little sticky on the lock there still. But obviously the handles are titanium, and they're fluted titanium. Really nice machining in there to create these beautiful handles. Obviously it's a pillar construction. The front and the back are pretty much exactly the same. The push button lock, one of the benefits is that you get a really strong lock without having to create a lock side that kind of takes away from the overall presentation. But if Brian Tighe did do a frame lock, which I think he used to at some point, I'm sure it would still be elegant and quite beautiful. Obviously he has a lot of organic influences in his knives, and you can see that throughout this here. But anyhow, the flats here are blasted. I'm sorry, the grooves are blasted, and then kind of the flats up here are satin brushed, so some nice contrast. Now, I don't know if you can tell or not, but it actually concaves here in the middle, so you have kind of higher and lower portions, even going from side to side. And the benefit of that, aside from being very aesthetically pleasing, is that sorry, didn't flip that well, but your hand kind of rests right in those grooves there, in these little valleys essentially. And yeah, this knife, actually the ergonomics are absolutely fantastic. It's really quite impressive what he's able to achieve. And even though this knife has no jimping, the grip that you get it in your hand really lends itself well to call this a tactical folder as much as a gentleman's folder or a custom knife, or however you want to classify it. But the way that your hand just fits into these grooves and locks into the back here, I mean, honestly, it's quite amazing. If my hand was wet or slippery, or if I had soap on it, I don't think you could get this knife out of my hand. There's also a nice little kind of ramp here where your thumb naturally fits, but it fits in my hand very well, very nicely contoured, very ergonomic, and again, it's allows it to be as much tactical as it is a gentleman's folder and a custom knife, a nice showpiece. So the thing that's really interesting about this knife is even though this has 2 titanium slabs and a big old, longer than 4-inch blade, which is kind of a modified Tonto, it's got a little bit of a belly there, maybe even a tiny bit of recurve. But what's amazing about this knife is the weight. It is only 4 ounces. So if you are someone who really likes lightweight knives and you don't want to feel it in your pocket, this is probably the knife for you. So to give you a little test here, camera will focus. Let's see what, okay, we were having ounces right here. 4.05 ounces, take this off. 4.05 ounces. So let's compare this to, let's say a, Wilson StarTac, Chris Reeve Umnumzon. I don't know if they're the exact same weight, but this is 4.95, so almost a full ounce heavier. Wilson Combat. My Lion Steel SR1 Titanium comes in at 6.5 ounces. So what he's able to achieve is a 4-inch blade, almost a tactical knife. And size-wise, let's compare it to my SR1 here. Got a, you've got some extra tip there. And it's almost, what was this, 2 ounces lighter, more than 2 ounces lighter. Then, here we go. So, as you can see, it's just about neck and neck with the Amazon, I think. No, it's longer. And I don't know if the camera's conveying that very well because I'm kind of at an angle here, but let's go pivot to pivot. You can see it's got some extra length there, but it's lighter and it's more ergonomic than even this Wilson Combat Umnumzon. So pretty astounding that he was able to do it, and he does so by all of the, these are a little bit thinner slabs, and then all of the milling work, or the 3D machining, whatever you want to call it, it reduces a lot of the weight and makes it so lightweight and easy to carry. And the pocket clip, it's not really what you'd call a special pocket clip, but it works well with the design. It's almost what you'd call a standard clip, but with the finish that it is and the position that it's located, it just flows well with the design. It's not obtrusive by any means, and you hardly even notice it. So that's pretty neat. So how did I reach this point? Obviously, when you come into even the entry-level customs, you're entering new price realms. So my first knife, kind of going through the journey, was this lock back. I don't know anything about it. It's pretty much a piece of junk, but when my grandfather passed away, I found this knife in a shop, and my grandma said I could take it, but I just thought that this was the coolest knife ever, and I was probably 10 years old. So it's just a lock back, no washers to speak of. It's just riding on whatever, but I thought this was the coolest knife ever. And then from there you get into the tenacious, you start looking at knives in the less than $50 range. You're like, well, this is good, but what else am I missing out on? Then you jump into maybe some sub $200 knives like the Gale Bradley, which I still think is an amazing knife for the price. Then you're like, well, the Gale Bradley's good, but what else am I missing? And then you jump into, let's say, your Lion Steels, single piece titanium construction, and you're like, well, this is awesome. What's Chris Reeve all about? What's all the hype about Chris Reeve? And then you step into Chris Reeve knives, and you're like, well, this is pretty good, but there's got to be something even better out there. And thus you end up into the custom folders. And the things that I really like about this knife are, one, it's absolutely beautiful. I had it delivered to work because obviously it was shipped with signature required and all that. And I showed it off to a few coworkers, and they thought that the polished blade was really, really neat. And coming from kind of the, middle of the road, lower end knives, if you see a polished knife in your price range, you can probably expect it to be Chinese and poorly made, or it could be made anywhere. But polished blades, or blades that have this nice of a finish, you're going to find on really cheap knives trying to imitate the really expensive knives, or you're going to find it on really expensive knives. So my coworkers thought that the polished was cool, and I've typically stayed away from more of the polished finishes because of scratching. You're a little nervous to use it. You don't want to mess it up. The contouring here in the blade itself, matches nicely with the handle, pulls the design together, has a lot of continuity. But the things that I like, I love the way it feels in the hand. I love all the machining work. I love the pillar construction. I like the pocket clip. The button lock, I'm warming up to it. It's still a little bit sticky, so I'm not sure how I feel about it. But the one thing that was almost a little bit disappointing for me was the weight. And maybe I'm naive or inexperienced with custom knives, but I like a little bit more robust feeling in my knives. I like a little bit of weight. I mean, this thing disappears in your pocket. You might forget that you have it, and if you're carrying around a knife this expensive in your pocket, you don't want to forget that you have it. I like the weight on the line steels. I like the weight on my Wilson StarTac. So I mean, if there's any one criticism, and it's not even a criticism against the knife, it's a personal preference, the knife is lighter than I expected. The titanium slabs are thinner than I expected. Do I think that they're going to fail or warp or have any problems? Absolutely not. Brian Tighe is proven. He knows how to design a knife and build a knife. And I think it functions well. Now, one other thing I like is this is the smoothest knife that I have possibly come across. I mean, it's not that it's free falling, but it's just when it's going to that open position, it feels like it's riding on air. I mean, it puts my Chris Reeve here to shame in terms of how smooth it is. And I don't know if it's on bearings or not. I mean, it looks like they're washers down there. It looks like they're bronze washers, but I haven't taken it apart to check. I saw in another video someone said he has a proprietary bearing system. Could be the case. I don't know. So anyways, what was my experience jumping into the customs? It's good. I don't know that with this knife I feel like I've hit that next level, that I'm really on that high, but I can't really level too many criticisms other than my own personal taste against this knife. I'm still undecided if I'm going to keep it or not, or get into something else, but it's beautiful, it's stunning, it's well made, it's extremely ergonomic, it's very sharp, lightweight if you like that. So anyhow, those are just my thoughts and experiences on the knife, and it's certainly been a pleasure to be able to handle this. This isn't something that you can go down and find anywhere and be able to check it out. Even at Blade HQ with their stock, these things don't stay in stock for more than just a few days. So anyhow, if you get a chance to check one out and you like lightweight, definitely go for the Tiebreaker. I think that some of his other models are a little bit thicker and a little bit heavier. I was checking out a few of those online tonight, but yeah, I guess that's about it. Brian Tighe Tiebreaker, my first custom. Definitely some excitement, but not quite there for me just yet. And I don't know what type of price range it's going to take to help me to reach that next level, but it does frighten me some. So anyways, that's about it. Comments, questions, if you have any, you can put them in the box below. And that's about it. Thanks.